All right, so now we're going to work with methods and using objects within the class. So I have went ahead and just created another Java class for this, just for the purposes of making it easier on your eyes and understanding this tutorial. So our class in this case is now called class objects. As you see in blue, class objects is the name of the class we're working with. And we're going to be utilizing this class to create objects. So when you create an object of a class, so we'll do that. When you create a object of a class, you need to create it within your main method. So this is our main method, and we're going to create a object of the class called, or of the class objects, because that we already know that's our class. So we want to create an object of this class. So how do you create an object? When you create an object, the syntax for that is going to be, you're going to call the class name, and then you're going to give it a variable name, and then you're going to say it's going to be equal to new, and then the class name again, followed by a colon or a semicolon. All right, so we're going to create a object of this class. So I'm going to swing this around, and I will, this one here, slide that up, and then we'll see here, oops. So we'll put object syntax, so you know, and we're going to create an object of the class objects. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So it has to match the exact name of the class we're working with. So class objects is spelled like that. As you see, they're both highlighted now, and then we're going to give it a variable name. So I'm going to say object 1 is going to equal new class objects again, like that. And then the last thing you have to do is put empty parentheses. So without the parentheses, it's going to give you an error, as you saw. So you have to put the parentheses after the class name. So let me add that here as well. All right, so this is now a object of class objects. Okay. So now that we have that, we can use this to call methods as well. So now let's go ahead and create a method. So we'll go ahead and create another method. So this time we'll go ahead and use, let's say string. So we'll do, method 1. So we'll go ahead and say public string, and we'll say name, then we'll follow it by the empty parentheses. Now, of course, it's giving us an error. Now, if you remember back, it's telling us that we either have to make it void or have a return statement. In this case, we're going to make it void. So we'll go ahead and do public void main. So now that we have public void name, all we have to do now is go ahead and tell our method what to do. So that was the simple fix for that. If you wanted to return the actual name, you could do that as we saw in the previous example. But in this case, we'll make it void just to avoid having to use the return statement. All right, so now we have a method. Nothing is in our method, so we need to put something in our method. So in this case, let's go ahead and also put in information here. So we'll go ahead and put our print statement, our empty print statement. So system dot out dot print line, and then we'll enter some information in later. So of course, you know from this that you can input some information here. So we could say string fname is going to equal, and in this case, we'll put SpongeBob. All right. So fname is SpongeBob's first name. So then let's say we want to put his last name. So we'll do another variable, string lname equals, we'll put SquarePants. All right. So now we have two string variables here. Now, what if we want to create his full name? So we'll create another variable that says string full name equals, and in this case, I'm going to add a space here so I can add them together. And then I'm going to say fname plus lname. So this is going to hold the full name. All right. So now in this method, we have created a variable called fname that holds SpongeBob, lname that holds SquarePants, and full name, which holds both names together. So I want to print out all of these. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to use that, and then we're going to add our comment, printing all local variables. And remember, our local variables are the ones that exist inside of our method. So in this case, our local variables are the ones that exist inside of method name. And here we're going to go ahead and put 3 of those print statements because we have 3 variables, and we're going to go ahead and type in our variable names. So fname, lname, and full name. All right. So now we have our variable created. Now remember, for us to use our method, we have to call it. So we're not calling our method anywhere in our code right now, and we need to do that. And we're going to go down to our main method to do that. So we're going to call the method 1. So to call method 1, remember, in this case, we're going to be using the class object. So when we're using the class object, you have to state what the class object is before you call the method name. So what does that look like? So in this case, it's going to look like this. You're going to first call the actual object. So our object is object 1. Okay? That's how you call the object. So we're calling object 1 here. To use the method of the object, if you click period, then you can then work with its methods. So in our case, the one method we have inside of our class is name. Name 1, or actually just name, and then end it there. And now you see we are having a call of the object. So this is calling the object and its method. So the method has an object because we created the method of the class. And the method exists inside of the class. So because the method exists inside of the class objects, that means the object of the class can use the method. So that's why it's working. So if we click run, then you see it prints out our method because we called our object that we created here, and then we called the method that we created in this case. So that's one example of working with objects. So we didn't have to do everything we had to do on the last example because we created an object. So in this case, when you create an object, you can call any methods within that class just like this. In this case, we also did not assign it to a variable. You can assign it to a variable if you would like, but you do not have to. So in this case, you could have simply said, for example, if you were to use a data type that returned a value with numbers, then you could store it in a variable. So I'll show you an example of that. So in this case, we'll go ahead and put a variable called age, or a method called age. So we'll do method 2. And here we will call it, let's see, public int, and then we'll say age. And in this one, we're going to use a return statement. So that's why I'm not putting void, to show you another example of that one. And we're just going to say inside of here that we're going to create int age equals, and nobody really knows how old SpongeBob is, so we'll just put 45. I mean, I feel like SpongeBob's been on for a long time, so we'll put 45. And then we're going to go ahead and return the value of age here. So now we have fixed our error issues because we're returning a value. So now we have another method. So if we scroll down to our main method, then let's say we want to call method 2 now. So we want to call age. So as you know, you call your object first. Object 1 dot age is what we want to do, and then end it with a semicolon. And in this case, I want to assign it to a variable. So here I want to say that I want to establish this object call to a variable. So first, let's just run in and see what happens. And as you see here, it does not show you the value of age, although we're calling it. It does not show it to you because we did not tell it to show it to us. We never said here in our method to print it out to show it to the user. So we would have to tell our program somewhere to show us or print out the value of age. Now, if you remember, age is holding that integer value. If you see here, it says int. So whatever age is being held in this. So if you assign it to a variable, it will then store that value that is being returned. So we'll say int age is equal to object 1 age. Now in this case, we do not have to worry about having two variables called age because you remember this one is going to be a local variable and this is a global variable, which means that those two variables are two different variables. Although they are identical, they do not exist the same way. So now let's say I want to print them out. So I'm going to go ahead and print age. So I'm going to say here that SpongeBob SquarePants, or actually, I don't even have to do that. I could call the method, but I'm not going to because I didn't assign it to a variable. So I'll say SpongeBob is, and then put here age. All right. So we're going to click run. And here we have SpongeBob is 45. So that is another way you can use method calls by assigning it to variables. This is helpful when you're using the return statement. So this is generally what you would do if you're using a method that's returning a value. You would have to assign it to a variable and then tell it to be printed later on, or you would have to say for it to be printed inside the actual method itself. So that's another way. So to do that, for example, we'll go ahead and use the scanner class for our last method example. So the scanner class, as you know, we first have to import our scanner. So we'll scroll up. import, and I'm going to use the asterisk way to just import everything. And now I'm going to go down and create a scanner. So scanner scan equals new scanner system.in. All right, so now I have that portion, and I'm going to go ahead and use my scanner now. So we're going to go ahead and ask our user to enter in what we want to collect. So in this case, I want to ask my user for a age. So we're going to do that in the print statement. So what is your age? All right. So we're asking our user to enter an age, and then we're going to say that int user age is going to equal to scan dot next int. So this is going to hold user's age. All right. So now we're just accepting an age to use in this case. But we need to create a method that's going to take in our user input. So we're going to scroll to the top. And in this case, we're going to create a method. So this will be our method 3. And we are going to say, in this case, it could be a return statement version, or it could be a void version. It's totally up to you. But in this case, we could say that we're going to just use the return statement again. So we'll go ahead and create that. So we'll say public int age, and then do our curly braces. And here you see we're getting an error, and it's telling us that we have a duplicate method age in the class of class objects. So you cannot create a method with the same name. It is going to cause problems. So anytime you're creating methods, do not create multiple methods with the same name. If you simply add a 1 to this method, it would fix our problem. So if you added a 1, it would simply fix the error, and now you see the error's gone here. The reason we got an error here is because we're not returning a type or have it set to void. So there is a way that you can actually have a method with the same name, but it has to have parameters. So in this case, you can add a parameter. So we're going to put that our parameter is going to be of a number. So I'll just put int n, and that'll count for a number. And then in here, I want to say that I want to return what n is. So return n. And that's going to return the value of the parameter, which is a number. So this is a quick method we created here. Now, if I scroll down to our main method, you see we have no errors. So if you pass in a parameter, it will be successful, right? So if I were to copy this and create another method, just like it, you see I'm getting an error, okay? It's going to get an error because they are now exactly the same, yet again. The only way to fix this, again, is to add another variable. So int y, and that fixes it. So you can technically have variable methods with the same name. The only way to allow that to happen is if each of those methods of the same name have different parameters. So if you see this first method, so method 2 has no parameters. So age, this method of age has no parameters. This method of age has one parameter. this method of age has 2 parameters. That makes it 3 different methods because you have to enter in a value to use this method, you have to enter 2 values to use this method, and you have to enter no values to use this method. So I'll show you that in our main method, how this is working. So in this case, for this example, because we have 2 values, I'm just going to say that I want to return n plus y. So we'll just say like this is the case of a birthday. So method for birthday age update. So now we have 3 variables of age and we're going to call those now. So we'll scroll to our main method. And then I'm going to put working with age methods. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and work with my age methods, and remember they're all called age. So the first thing you need to do is call the object. So we're going to call method 2 first. And method 2, or we're going to call, actually I meant to say age with no parameters. Call age method with no parameters. Okay, so we're going to say object 1 is equal to age. And if we do that, oops, forgot object 1 dot age. All right, so that's going to call our first age method, and running that, then it says, what is your age? We have to enter our age, and we'll put 12, and then you see nothing happens. Scrolling up, you see here that for this case, you have to obviously return the value of age. So remember, you have to create the variable to see the actual age, or we could have simply just put it in a print statement as well. So I will show you that. So I'm going to save this portion, and what we're going to do is create a print statement here. Oops. Let me delete that. I'm going to copy this. I'll put it in here. And then add our parentheses back to this. So then I'm going to say users age is, and that's a way that we can call it. All right, now if I click run, it's going to say, okay, what is our age? We'll put 12. And now you see it's going to say user's age is 45. Okay, so you're probably like, where's 45 coming from? Okay, you're going to have to scroll up, and then you see here it is giving us the age of 45. So this is basically overriding the value of our user because we're not passing in our scanner. So you're probably thinking, I entered 12, why did 12 not show up? The reason is we're not passing in that user input into this method. It's basically taking whatever we established the age to be inside of the method, and that was 45. So although we did enter 12, this method is going to use 45 because we created 45 as the value in that method. So to see the actual age of 12, we would have to use our other 2 methods that we created here. So we'll go ahead and run our method 3, or our age with parameter. So we're going to call age method with 1 parameter. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this because it's basically going to be the same thing. Command C, and then all I'm going to do here is now add in the user age as a parameter. So I'm going to pass in user age from here. I'm going to pass this into my method call here to enter in one parameter. So user age. All right, now our issue is solved. So now if I run this, it says what is the age? I'm going to say 12. And when I click enter, you see here's our response to our first method of age with no parameter. And here is our response with our method of age with our one parameter. So it just pretty much passed in whatever we entered into our scanner, and it passed it in as a variable here, and it returned that value to the user, which was 12. So that's how you'd use a case of a one parameter method, and then you can have multiple parameters here. So technically I could have 10 numbers if I want to pass into a method. You don't have a limit on the number of parameters you can pass into a method, so feel free to pass in as many as you want, but you don't have a limit. Of course, here we could also pass in strings if we wanted to. You could pass in doubles, booleans. In this case, just to keep it simple, I'm only working with integers, but it does not have to only accept the data type of integers. You can have strings, you can have doubles, booleans, whatever you need to pass in, you can pass in. But going back to the example, we're going to run our age method with our two parameters to show how that works. And here, this is for the case of our birthday. So obviously each year you turn 1 year older. So we're just going to enter our second number as 1. So here we're just going to call age method with two parameters. And we're going to go ahead and just paste our print statement here. So I want to have my first parameter as user age like the previous example. So if I were to leave this call like this, it would call the age method with one parameter. So in our example, that was method 3. So that line will call method 3 twice. As you see, they're identical. This is calling method 3. This is calling method 3. For us to call method 4 with two parameters, you would have to do comma and then give it another value. In this case, like I said, we're going to use 1. And now you see it fixes our issue. So if you remember, now that we're using the age method with two parameters, what it's going to return to us is basically n plus y. And in our case, this is going to be user age, and this is going to be the value of 1. So this should just increase our value of the user age by 1. So scrolling down, now when we run it, we'll add a new print statement here. It's going to, user age is going to be blank, or user age after birthday. Let's put that. All right, so I'll rerun it now that I updated that. So it's going to say, what is your age? I'm going to put 12. And then you see here, it printed 45 from our first case because remember, it's returning the value of 45 that we inputted here because we passed in no data. The second one we're getting is our user age is 12 because we're passing in user input here, and it's just going to return the value of 12 to us. And this is going to be our method 4 example. So you see here we have 13. Nowhere in our code did we enter 13. However, we're getting 13 from this line here when we're saying we want to return n plus y, being that we're passing in our user input, which was 12, and then added 12 plus whatever we passed in as our y, which in our case, we passed in 1 right here. So that returned to us that the user's age after their birthday is going to be 13. All right, so that is basically how you work with methods. As you have seen over these two parts, there are a lot of ways to create methods. There's a lot of ways to call them. There's a lot of ways to use them. But this is how you create and use methods within your classes. So this is going to be really helpful if we have the case where we have multiple objects, which in this case we don't. So what you could do is you create another object. So you can create as many objects as you want. We could have copied this multiple times. So you could have just copied this, then I could come down here and show you that. And then this is going to be a second object of the class. And here we could have just easily used this one just like we used the other one. And we could have said int age 2, int age 2 is equal to object 2 dot age, right? And then that could be another variable. So this is just going to basically hold, which I'll let you see it actually. So let's go ahead and do a print statement, system.out.print line, and we'll say object 2 age is, then we'll put age 2, and we'll run that, put in our age 12, and then you see it here, it says object 2 age is 45. And how is it 45? Because when you're creating multiple objects, it's just going to use whatever method on the object, and our age method, if you remember, is holding the value of 45. So it doesn't matter how many objects you have or how many objects you're creating, the methods will always run the exact same with the objects, regardless of what object it is. So we use this with object 1, which is up here, and it showed us 45, which you saw here. And if you see here, object 2 is also 45. We use age as the method, and because we're using age as a method with the object, any objects you create are going to use any methods that exist in your class. So it's just basically reusing the method we already created, which is why methods are useful. It's useful if you want to keep doing the same thing over and over again, similar to a loop, but not necessarily. But it's just useful to help you organize your code. So as you see here, I didn't necessarily have to keep writing out these 2 lines of code each time I wanted to use it. All I had to do was call my method to continuously call these lines of code. So that is why methods are useful, because you don't have to keep repeating the same code to use it over and over again. You simply just have to call the method name for whatever lines of code inside of the method to run. So with methods, this can be a challenging topic to get a grasp of. So I highly suggest that you guys look at this video multiple times, even take notes to understand it, because methods is a little complicated to work with. However, once you kind of get the hang of it and get an idea of how it works, it generally is easy and fun to use after you finally understand it. So this is definitely one of those topics you have to invest more time in to fully understand what's going on, especially being that I covered so much information in this video. It could be overwhelming and hard to get the first time. So if you don't get it the first time, I just say, take it one step at a time, try to write it out, and just watch what I do first and then try it out yourself second. So this has been a tutorial of methods. I hope that this was useful to you. Methods are going to be used within a lot of programs, especially when you get into the professional realm of programming, or even just hobby-wise, you're going to use methods. If you're not using methods, then you're not coding right. You should always have methods within each program you create. So this is now a new topic that you should use and implement within every program going forward from now. So to wrap this up, as I always say, you want to keep practicing coding. The more you practice, the better you'll get, and the better you get, the more confident you'll feel when it comes to coding. So thank you for sticking around for this very long video. As you see, there's a lot that goes into methods, but it is well worth it to spend time listening to this. And I hope that you learned something from this lesson. And I can't wait to teach you another topic in the next video. I'll see you guys next time.